Ciao. Can you tell me which one of these two sentences is grammatically correct? Look at the first one. Luca è rimasto a cena da Giovanni. Look at the second one. Luca ha rimasto a cena da Giovanni. I wonder. Did you say the first one? Yes, the first one is correct. And now you're going to say, but Giulia, why? Why can I use essere and not avere in that example? Well, this is exactly what you are going to learn today. With this quick video, I'm going to tell you when you can use essere and when you can use avere as auxiliary verbs, especially when you're talking with the verb tense of passato prossimo. If you need to review essere and avere, I will link a video where you have all the different explanations and also when you use those two verbs not as auxiliary verbs, but in general when you use them inside of sentences. In this specific video, I'm going to show you the difference of using one or the other when you have compound verbs, okay? Just like passato prossimo. First rule, all verbs that we call transitivi, so all of the transitive verbs, all of the verbs that have a direct object, they need to use avere when they are conjugated with passato prossimo. Let me give you some examples. Beatrice ha finito la pizza. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what am I talking about when I talk about direct object? Well, ask yourself a question with this sentence. Beatrice ha finito la pizza. The question that you're going to ask yourself is, what did Beatrice finish? And the answer is the pizza. So in this case, you know that you have a direct object and you know that this verb, finire, is a transitive verb. Mario ha sposato Lucia. Once again, the verb here is ha sposato, avere sposato. The verb sposare is a transitive verb. It has, in this case, a direct object. Who did Mario marry? The answer is Lucia. So in this case, you can say that the verb is a transitive verb and it's a verb that needs the auxiliary avere, ha sposato. Rule number 2. If you are conjugating a reflexive verb to the passato prossimo form, so you're conjugating it at the past tense, you will need to use the auxiliary verb essere. For example, mi sono fatta una doccia. In this case, you're talking about taking a shower. The verb that is reflexive is farsi. So you are taking a shower on yourself, on your own body. So you know it's a reflexive verb. In this case, reflexive verbs, when they're used at the past, will need auxiliary verb essere. So you will have mi sono fatta una doccia. Ci siamo conosciuti ieri. In this example, you have the verb conoscersi, to get to know one another. So once again, you have a reflexive verb. You know that that's a reflexive verb, and then you will need to automatically use the verb essere. Rule number 3. All of the other verbs, so the verbs that we can call intransitivi, that do not have a direct object, will need the auxiliary verb essere when they are conjugated at the verb tense passato prossimo, so at the past tense. And now you're going to tell me, what are these verbs, Giulia? Well, here is a list of all the verbs that are contained in this very big group of verbs that we call intransitivi. we can break it down with verbs that we call verbi di stato. For example, restare, stare, rimanere. Let me give you an example. Giorgio è rimasto a casa. You have rimasto, which is the verb rimanere. Since it falls under the category of verbo di stato, you will need the auxiliary verb essere. È rimasto. When you have verbs of movement, verbi di movimento, like andare, venire, partire, tornare, entrare, uscire, cadere. All those are verbs of movement and they will need the auxiliary verb essere. Let's look at a couple of examples. Siamo andati a scuola. You have the verb andare, verb of movement. You need an auxiliary verb essere. L'aereo è partito. Once again, you have partito, which is the verb partire. It's a verb of movement. You're using auxiliary verb essere. È partito. You will also use them when you have verbs of change, verbi di cambiamento, like diventare, crescere, morire, nascere. Okay? Let me give you a couple of examples. Anna è nata ad agosto. I have the verb nascere, to be born. You know that with this verb, when you're talking about the passato prossimo, you need the auxiliary verb essere. È nata. La festa è iniziata alle 4. You have the verb iniziare. So you need to use the auxiliary verb essere when you have the passato prossimo. È iniziata. You will also use the auxiliary verb essere when you have what we call verbi impersonali. So these verbs are like piacere, dispiacere, parere, bastare, succedere, sembrare. Let's look at a couple of examples. Roma mi è piaciuta tantissimo. You have piacere. You're using the passato prossimo. You need the auxiliary verb essere. Mi è piaciuta. Luca mi è sembrato un po' triste. You're using the verb sembrare, which it falls under the category of impersonal verbs. And once again, you're using the passato prossimo, so you need the auxiliary verb essere. Mi è sembrato. Remember that when you have the auxiliary verb essere, you will always need to match gender and number when you're conjugating the verbs. So don't fall into that trick, okay? So if I say, ieri è nata mia nipote Maria. Since I'm talking about the birth of a girl, I will use nata. If, on the other hand, I'm talking about a boy, I will need to correctly adjust the verb. I will say, ieri è nato Paolo. Paolo is a boy, so I will change to nato. This only happens when you have the auxiliary verb essere, okay? So heads up for that. When you are conjugating these verbs, make sure that you remember also that little rule, okay? As always, be sure to do some extra exercises, and I suggest that you do them by using this book at page 79 in this case. You have a little explanation with extra examples, of course, and following that, you have a couple of pages of exercises. It's a self-studying book. Match that with my lesson, and you're on the go for a real, precise Italian lesson. Okay? So give me a thumbs up if you liked this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Un bacio. Ciao.